My name is Olivia Reynolds, and I'm 35. I'm a software developer, and until last Easter, I believed I was simply the practical one in my family. The responsible, level-headed sister who preferred quiet evenings to the boisterous social gatherings my family seemed to thrive on. My younger sister, Chloe, was the golden child, the charismatic free spirit who could charm her way out of any situation and into everyone's hearts. Our parents, Robert and Susan, doted on her, seemingly blind to her flaws and quick to dismiss mine. I lived in Austin, Texas, a city I loved for its vibrant tech scene and its slightly offbeat culture. My family remained in our hometown of Charleston, South Carolina, a place steeped in tradition and, as I was slowly beginning to realize, suffocating expectations. The Easter deception began innocently enough. A few weeks before the holiday, I called my mother to discuss travel plans. "Mom, I'm thinking of flying in for Easter weekend. Are we doing the usual big family brunch at your place?" There was a slight hesitation on the other end of the line. "Oh, honey, how about that? We've decided to keep things very low-key this year. Just a small, quiet gathering. Your father hasn't been feeling well, and we don't want to overdo it." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuine concern filling my voice. "Is it serious?" No, just a bit of a cold." "He's being dramatic, of course." She chuckled, but the sound felt forced. "But we really think it's best to just keep it to ourselves this year. You understand, right?" "Of course, Mom. I understand," I replied, trying to push down the familiar pang of disappointment. It wasn't the first time plans had been scaled back when I was involved. I spent Easter Sunday alone in my Austin apartment. I made myself a nice breakfast, worked on a coding project I was passionate about, and watched a few episodes of my favorite show. I tried to convince myself that I was perfectly content with the solitude. But a nagging feeling of unease persisted. It was late afternoon when I decided to take a break and scroll through social media. That's when I saw it. A post from my cousin, Jessica, on social media. The photo showed a lavishly decorated dining room table laden with food. My entire family, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even my frail grandmother, were gathered around, beaming at the camera. Chloe, radiant in a floral dress, stood at the head of the table, raising a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Blessed to celebrate another beautiful Easter with the whole family. So much love in this room. #family traditions, #Easter brunch, #Charleston charm." My breath caught in my throat. My hands trembled as I zoomed in on the photo. There was no sign of illness, no hint of a low-key gathering. My father, supposedly suffering from a cold, looked perfectly healthy, laughing heartily as he carved a roasted ham. Through the window behind them, I could see the bright Charleston sunshine. It was a perfect spring day, not a cloud in the sky. The lie was blatant, and the pain was immediate and visceral. It felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a deliberate, coordinated exclusion. I scrolled through more photos, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. There was my mother, arranging her famous deviled eggs, a dish she'd always claimed was too much trouble to make when I was around. There were my nieces and nephews, opening Easter baskets overflowing with gifts. This small, quiet gathering was a complete fabrication. They had intentionally excluded me, gone to great lengths to make sure I wouldn't be there, and then flaunted their perfect family celebration for the world to see. The questions flooded my mind. How long had this been going on? How many other family events had I been deliberately excluded from, under the guise of cancellations or small gatherings? How could they be so casually cruel, so seemingly unconcerned with my feelings? That evening, I tried calling my mother. The phone rang and rang, going straight to voicemail. I left a brief, strained message. "Mom, I saw Jessica's social media post. I'm confused. Can you please call me back?" I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. The silence from my family was deafening. Days turned into a week, and still, no one reached out. I replayed the Easter deception in my mind, trying to make sense of it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a long-standing pattern. Growing up, I had always felt like an outsider in my own family. While Chloe was praised for her social butterfly tendencies and her artistic, though often impractical, pursuits, my achievements were often overlooked or downplayed. I remembered when I graduated at the top of my class in high school. My parents had thrown a small, almost perfunctory party, while Chloe's high school graduation, where she barely scraped by, was celebrated with a huge bash, complete with a live band and a catered buffet. When I landed a prestigious internship at a tech company during college, my father's response was, "That's nice, dear. But when are you going to find a nice young man and settle down?" Chloe, meanwhile, had spent her college years flitting between various majors, dropping out of classes, and traveling on my parents' dime. Yet, she was lauded for her adventurous spirit. Even seemingly small things, like family dinners, were fraught with subtle jabs and dismissals. My contributions to conversations were often met with polite nods, while Chloe's rambling anecdotes were greeted with uproarious laughter. I had always chalked it up to personality differences. I was introverted, focused, and driven. Chloe was extroverted, spontaneous, and, frankly, a bit flaky. I told myself that my family loved me in their own way, even if they didn't always understand me. But the Easter lie shattered that carefully constructed illusion. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth. My family didn't just misunderstand me, they actively excluded me. They preferred the perfect image of a family that included Chloe, the golden child, and excluded me, the inconvenience. The realization was both painful and liberating. Painful because it confirmed my deepest insecurities, the fear that I was somehow unworthy of their love and acceptance. Liberating because it freed me from the endless cycle of trying to earn their approval. I had been striving for something that was never going to be given freely. After a week of agonizing silence, I finally received a text message from my mother. "Olivia, honey, we need to talk. Can you call me when you have a chance?" The tone was carefully neutral, devoid of any hint of apology or remorse. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I saw the Easter photos. What happened to the small, quiet gathering? There was a long pause. "Oh, Olivia, don't be so dramatic," she sighed. "It just evolved. More people decided to come at the last minute. It was all very spontaneous." "Spontaneous?" I repeated, incredulous. "So, everyone just happened to show up with Easter baskets and perfectly coordinated outfits? And you just happened to have enough food for a small army? Well, you know how these things are," she said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Chloe organized it, and she's always been a bit impulsive. We didn't want to bother you with the changing plans, knowing how busy you are with your work." "Bother me?" I exclaimed. "You lied to me, Mom. You told me you were having a small gathering because Dad was sick, and then you threw a huge party and excluded me." "Don't be ridiculous, Olivia," she snapped. "We would never intentionally exclude you. You're being overly sensitive. You always do this, you know. You take things the wrong way and make a big drama out of nothing." This was a classic tactic, one I had heard countless times before. My family was masters of gaslighting, twisting situations around to make me feel like I was the one at fault, the one who was overreacting, the one who was creating problems. "No, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not overreacting. This isn't the first time this has happened. It's a pattern. You constantly exclude me, and then you make excuses or blame me for being upset. That's simply not true," she insisted. "We love you, Olivia. You're our daughter. But you have to understand, Chloe is different. She needs more attention. She's more sensitive." "Sensitive?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Chloe is manipulative and self-centered, and you enable her behavior. You cater to her every whim while dismissing my feelings and accomplishments. Olivia, please. My mother pleaded. Don't say such things. We're a family. We need to stick together. A family that lies to each other? A family that deliberately excludes one of its members? I asked. That's not a family, Mom. That's a charade. The conversation ended with my mother in tears, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. I hung up the phone, feeling drained and defeated. But beneath the exhaustion, there was a flicker of resolve. I was done playing their games. I was done trying to fit into their warped version of reality. The confrontation with my mother only solidified my determination to uncover the full extent of their deception. I knew there was more to the story, more than just a spontaneous Easter gathering. I started digging, meticulously piecing together the fragments of information I had. I began with social media. I scoured the profiles of my family members, looking for clues, for any hint of other events I had been excluded from. I found plenty. There were photos from a girls' weekend trip to the beach that Chloe had organized, a trip I had never been invited to. There were pictures from a family birthday party for my uncle, a party I had been told was canceled due to a scheduling conflict. There were countless snapshots of casual dinners, weekend outings, and holiday celebrations, all featuring the same smiling faces, all excluding me. Each discovery was like a small cut, deepening the wound of betrayal. But with each piece of evidence, my anger grew, fueling my determination to expose their lies. I also started reaching out to distant relatives, family friends, and acquaintances, people who might have witnessed the dynamic within my family. I was careful not to reveal too much, simply asking casual questions about past events, trying to gauge their reactions. The responses were illuminating. Many people were hesitant to speak openly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. But some, particularly those who had been on the periphery of my family's social circle, were more forthcoming. Oh, yes, Chloe's Easter brunch was quite the affair. One family friend said. It's been an annual tradition for years. Everyone always looks forward to it. Years? I asked, my heart sinking. But I thought. Well, I don't know what you were told. She said, her voice trailing off. But it's definitely been a regular thing. Another acquaintance, a former colleague of my father's, mentioned a family vacation to a theme park that had taken place a few years earlier. I remember Robert talking about it for weeks. He said. He was so excited to take the whole family. Said it was a dream come true for Chloe. I had never been told about that trip. At the time, I had been working long hours on a major project at work. My parents had called me to check in, but they had never mentioned anything about a vacation. The more I learned, the more I realized the depth and breadth of their deception. It wasn't just about occasional events, it was about a systematic, deliberate effort to exclude me from their lives, to erase me from their family narrative. As I continued my investigation, I stumbled upon something unexpected, something that added a whole new layer of complexity to the situation. It involved my family's finances. I had always known that my parents were reasonably well off. My father had a successful career as a lawyer, and my mother had inherited a sizable sum of money from her parents. But I had never been privy to the details of their financial affairs. One evening, I was going through some old boxes of paperwork that I had stored in my apartment. These were documents from my college years, mostly bills, receipts, and old tax returns. As I was sorting through them, I found a folder labeled Financial Aid. Inside, I found a copy of my parents' tax return from the year I started college. I had needed it to apply for financial aid, as my parents had insisted that I take out student loans to cover my tuition, despite their apparent wealth. As I scanned the document, something caught my eye. There was a line item listing a significant amount of income from a trust fund. The trust fund was in my name. I stared at the document, my mind racing. I had never known about a trust fund. My parents had never mentioned it. Why would they keep something like that a secret? I immediately called my older cousin, Mark, who worked as a financial advisor. Mark had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who questioned the status quo and challenged my parents' authority. He was also someone I trusted. "Mark," I said, my voice trembling. "I need your help. I found something strange." I explained the situation, describing the tax return and the trust fund. Mark listened patiently, asking clarifying questions. "Olivia," he said, his voice grave. "This is serious. If your parents were managing a trust fund in your name and they didn't disclose it to you, that's a major breach of fiduciary duty. It could even be criminal." He agreed to help me investigate. He contacted a lawyer specializing in estate and trust law, and together, they began unraveling the complex web of my family's finances. What they discovered was shocking. The trust fund had been established by my maternal grandfather, a wealthy businessman who had passed away when I was a child. The trust was intended to provide for my education and future financial security. It contained a substantial amount of money, more than enough to cover my college tuition and leave me with a significant nest egg. But my parents had never given me access to the funds. Instead, they had systematically drained the trust over the years, using the money to fund Chloe's extravagant lifestyle, her failed business ventures, and her numerous trips around the world. The documents showed a clear pattern of withdrawals, transfers, and investments, all benefiting Chloe, all at my expense. They had forged my signature on documents, misrepresented my financial situation to the university, and lied to me for years. The betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just about excluding me from family events, it was about stealing my inheritance, about depriving me of the financial security that my grandfather had intended for me. Armed with the evidence Mark and the lawyer had gathered, I made a difficult decision. I decided to take legal action against my parents and Chloe. It wasn't an easy choice. I knew it would likely destroy what was left of my relationship with my family. But I couldn't stand by and let them get away with their lies and theft. I owed it to myself and to my grandfather's memory to seek justice. I filed a lawsuit alleging breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and conversion. The lawsuit named my parents and Chloe as defendants. When my family received the legal documents, their reaction was predictable. They were outraged, indignant, and deeply offended. My mother called me, screaming and crying, accusing me of being a traitor, a monster, a disgrace to the family. My father sent me a series of angry emails, threatening to disown me and vowing to fight the lawsuit with every resource he had. Chloe, predictably, played the victim. She posted a long, tearful rant on social media, claiming that I was jealous of her success and that I was trying to ruin her life. She portrayed herself as the innocent, unsuspecting beneficiary of my parents' generosity, while painting me as the greedy, vindictive villain. The family drama quickly spilled over into the wider family circle. Relatives took sides, friendships were broken, and accusations flew back and forth. The perfect family facade crumbled, revealing the deep-seated dysfunction and resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Most of my relatives sided with my parents and Chloe, blindly accepting their version of events and condemning me for daring to challenge their authority. But a few, including my cousin Mark and a couple of aunts who had always suspected something was amiss, offered their support and encouragement. The legal process was long, arduous, and emotionally draining. I had to relive years of painful memories, confront my family's lies and manipulations, and endure their relentless attacks on my character. But I was determined to see it through. I had truth and justice on my side, and I refused to be intimidated or silenced. After months of legal wrangling, depositions, and negotiations, the case finally reached a settlement. My parents and Chloe agreed to repay a significant portion of the stolen funds, although it was far less than the full amount I was entitled to. They also agreed to issue a public apology, admitting their wrongdoing and acknowledging the harm they had caused me. The settlement was a victory, but it was a bittersweet one. The money could never fully compensate for the years of emotional pain and betrayal I had endured. And the apology, while necessary, felt hollow and insincere. The relationship with my family was irreparably damaged. I cut off all contact with my parents and Chloe, realizing that they were toxic influences in my life. I also distanced myself from most of my extended family, choosing to focus on building new, healthier relationships. The experience was transformative. It forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to challenge my deeply ingrained beliefs about family and loyalty, and to redefine my sense of self-worth. I learned that family is not always defined by blood. It's about the people who love you, support you, and accept you for who you are, flaws and all. I found that kind of family in my friends, my colleagues, and the few relatives who had stood by me during the ordeal. I also learned the importance of standing up for myself, of setting boundaries, and of refusing to tolerate mistreatment, even from those closest to me. I moved to a new city, started a new job, and began building a new life, one that was free from the lies, manipulation, and drama of my past. The Easter deception, while initially devastating, ultimately became a catalyst for positive change. It forced me to break free from a toxic family dynamic and to create a life that was authentic, fulfilling, and truly my own. It wasn't the Easter I had expected, but it was the Easter I needed. 5 years have passed since the Easter that changed my life. I'm now living in Seattle, working as a senior software engineer for a leading tech company. I'm in a loving relationship with a wonderful man named David, who values my independence, my intelligence, and my quirky sense of humor. I've built a strong network of friends, people who appreciate me for who I am, not for who they think I should be. I've reconnected with a few distant relatives who had been alienated by my parents' behavior, and we're slowly rebuilding those relationships. I haven't spoken to my parents or Chloe since the settlement. I occasionally hear updates about them through the grapevine, but I have no desire to re-enter their lives. The scars of the past remain, but they've faded. I've learned to forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. I've moved on, and I'm finally happy. Last Easter, David and I hosted a small gathering for our friends. We had a delicious brunch, exchanged gifts, and enjoyed each other's company. It was a simple, joyful celebration, filled with genuine warmth and affection. As I looked around the table at the smiling faces of my chosen family, I realized how far I had come. I had survived the betrayal, the lies, and the heartache. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The uninvited Easter had been a painful lesson, but it had also been a gift. It had taught me the true meaning of family, the importance of self-respect, and the power of forgiveness. And for that, I am grateful.